Something feels off in the West right now. Our culture has lost touch with the principles that built it in the first place. We've fallen into this weird mix of decadence and selfishness. We worship celebrities and ourselves. We chase comfort like it's the highest goal in our life. We talk constantly about rights, how everyone deserves them and everyone demands them. But no one likes to think about the responsibilities that come with those rights. We even say rights are God-given, but then we refuse to live like people who are accountable to anything higher than ourselves. And over time, that changes a society. Our culture has shifted from valuing self-sacrifice to sacrificing others for ourselves. And my generation and the next are going to be the one footing that bill. The generations before us benefited massively from the economic boom after World War II. The country was exploding with growth, opportunities were everywhere, wealth was being created on a scale the world had never really seen before. And a lot of people were able to accumulate wealth and power during that time. But what came along with that was something else. Many of the policies and institutions that were built during those decades ended up protecting the people who accumulated that wealth and power. If you were on top, great. The system works for you. And if you're not, well, don't worry. The government will take care of you. So we ended up with this culture where people become more dependent, less responsible, and less invested in building something for themselves. They would prefer to sap off the system. And that's how it was made. And the wealthy boomers who benefited from that system will wag their finger at you and demand respect, claiming it took all the hard work in the world to get them where they're at. You hear it all the time, respect your elders. But here's the thing, respect doesn't automatically come with age. Just getting older isn't an accomplishment. That's the bare minimum. Respect comes from leadership, comes from sacrifice. It comes from pouring into people who come after you and helping guide them. If you're not doing that, then simply existing for a long time doesn't make you worthy of respect. What does it actually mean to make America great again? And I don't mean it as the political slogan. I don't mean, what does it mean to support Trump? Because we all know he's been infiltrated at this point. I mean the literal phrase, what does it mean to make America great again? What is the great we're trying to return to? Because when you look at the modern right, there are a lot of different answers. Some people mean economic prosperity. Some people mean strong borders. Others, traditional family values. Personally, I want national pride. But if we're honest, there are a lot of competing visions inside this coalition. And I think it just needs to be burnt down and rebuilt. And eventually we're going to have to figure out which direction we're actually going. Here's the kind of thinking you hear consistently in our modern culture. People say parenting is a right, that anyone should be able to raise kids, adopt them, do whatever they want. But at the same time, we're told abortion should be completely normal if someone was irresponsible and had sex outside of marriage. So let me get this straight. Parenting is a right unless it's inconvenient. We say voting is a fundamental right, but we never talk about whether the people voting actually understand about the government functions and how it works, or whether they have a real stake in the future of the country. Things like raising a family here, owning property, running businesses here. A big one for me is having a lineage that has assimilated here. We treat citizenship like it's just a piece of paper, but historically citizenship meant something deeper than that. Another uncomfortable conversation people don't want to have is about assimilation, like I just mentioned. Not everyone who lives in America is automatically American in the cultural sense. Being American has historically meant adopting certain values, traditions, and customs, learning the language, participating in the culture, buying into the idea of the country. But we're told that expecting assimilation is somehow wrong, that people should be able to come here and remain completely separate from the culture around them. Where I live personally, we've seen a huge increase of people coming here on work visas. And a lot of them don't celebrate our holidays. They don't participate in the culture. They send most of the money they earn back to their families overseas in India. They're physically here, but they're not actually invested in the country. They're pillaging it and sending it back home. And that raises a real question. Should people who are temporarily here be able to buy homes? Should they be building wealth inside a country they're not actually a part of? If someone isn't an American citizen and they have no long-term commitments to the country, then why should they be allowed to accumulate land and property here? Why should they be allowed to stay? And those are some serious questions that politicians don't want to touch. Makes your family members uncomfortable. Makes you unpopular at work. But I think it's time we start discussing these things. What's happened over time is that our country has been hollowed out. A big part of it is that because Americans are compassionate people, we look at the people coming in from worse situations and we want to help them. But what we fail to recognize is that not everyone who comes here wants to join America. I'd argue many of the people we've recently seen come over just want to take advantage of America. And if a country can't tell the difference between those things, eventually it stops functioning. So again, we come back to the question, what does it mean to make America great again? Because it's not just about economics, not just about politics, it's about culture, it's about responsibility, it's about lineage. It's about whether the people living here are willing to sacrifice for something bigger than themselves. Great nations aren't built by the people chasing comfort. They're built by people who believe in duty, people who build families, who build communities, people who build institutions that last longer than their own lives. If America is going to become great again, it won't happen because of one politician, and it won't happen because of a slogan. It will happen when enough Americans decide to start living like citizens again instead of just consumers. Because in the end, the strength of the country is nothing more than the character of the people living inside it. And that's something every generation has to decide for themselves.